Thanks, everybody. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to sit down while I talk. And my first question to you, just to kind of know what you know, is who's been to Quetzal Farm? You've all been by now, or more or less all been. So I'm not going to spend necessarily a lot of time explaining it, except to remind you that we have 10 acres down there in Santa Rosa, near Sebastopol, and we grow organic vegetables, and we specialize tomatoes, dry farm tomatoes. Peppers and chilies are our biggest crop. We do a lot of cucumbers, and we do some other things, but 80% of what we grow at least is those three things. And I've been involved with the farm since 2004. In 2005 I became a partner. So that's really, the farm existed for 5 years before I came on board, and so my view of it is really what's gone on these last 8 years. Originally the farm was a left field farm, of which I was a part of, but I really worked at the other site, so I've been part of that land I've sort of seen that land in action since about 1999. So my perspective is sort of based on that, and this is fun to be able to come to this class, and I don't know exactly, except for the short lecture, I just heard exactly where you're at. So you might want to ask some questions as we go along, but Paul did send me a list of questions, and I will respond to those, talk about those, and then if there's anything particular that you're thinking about, you might want to jump in and ask it. So the first thing he asked is, who manages the finances of the business? And I have a business partner, Kevin. You've all met Kevin, right? That's who you've met so far. Traditionally, he started the farm. As I like to say, it's all his fault. But he started in 1999, and when I joined on, he was struggling because he was doing it all for farm market. He was basically running probably 90% of what he was making was through farm markets. And farm markets are great, but they're also very challenging in their own way. And then he brought me on really to be in charge of the administration, but really to develop a whole wholesale side, because he dealt a little bit with the local Whole Foods and a little bit with Dry Creek Kitchen up in Healdsburg, and that was about it. And so at this point, I'd say 65% of our business is through what I call wholesale, which is also direct to store. Really, it's a little different, but I call that wholesale, and about 35% to farm market. And maybe this year even a little less to farm market and a little more wholesale. So the business has changed a lot. In that I've traditionally been more the administrative person. I deal with the finances more, run the QuickBooks more, deal with labor, administration stuff. This year, Kevin, I've reduced my role a bit this year, and so Kevin's doing more of that, and he's doing a great job. But he's traditionally been more the farmer, so he definitely, you want to ask him the farming questions, and you might want to ask me more the marketing and sales and business questions. But we're both involved, and we both do. We both talk about it. We use each other to kind of make decisions, because one thing that you'll find when you start your own business is that nothing's very straightforward, and it's there's odd things come up, and you're tired a lot too. So it's good to have a partner to bounce questions off of, and that's part of why he brought me in. And so we review budgets together. In the winter, we we start with a marketing plan. We kind of look at who are we going to sell to, how much do we think we can sell, what crops to buy, and at this point we have a lot of information, because we can look and go, oh, this Whole Foods in Mill Valley bought X amount these last 2 or 3 years, and you can actually go, they're going to want to probably buy this. I mean, Whole Foods is pretty consistent, so you can. What we do is we literally make an Excel grid of who's going to buy and what they probably want based on what they've done, and then we speculate a little bit and we think about maybe a new buyer or two. And then we come up with a marketing plan, and from that we develop a crop plan. In the past we used to start with the crop plan, and then we did the marketing, but that was kind of helter-skelter, and that fell on me as the salesman to kind of go nuts to try and sell whatever we grew. And what you'll find is that's an exhausting way to approach it. It's better to, I like to know that there's a home for our produce than to just say, hey, we'll work it all out. So we work together and we do crop and marketing plans. We do that in the winter. We revisit in springtime, because what will happen is we order seeds, some seeds not available, the weather does certain things, you get a bunch of reality checks, boom, you review your crop plan and your marketing plan again. And then you then you start doing it, and in the middle of the summer you kind of do it again, and then right around this time of year we always do a big review. Not a big review, I mean we don't spend hours and hours, but we kind of look where are we at, where did we think we were going to be at, like what are expenses left for the rest of the year, and how much, we just did this last week, how much do we think we're going to spend, how much income do we think we're going to get based on where the crops are at, what we've brought in so far, and you make some more decisions. You decide whether you're going to buy something or not, or whether you're going to proceed with something, or whose door you're going to knock on with that. As things start winding down, you got to make decisions about who you're going to close off. So we do work together as a team, and then we visit with our accountant in about a month or so, or a month or two, and I'll get a little more into that later, but that's always very valuable to meet with our accountant. He gives us some reality checks and helps us sort of steer our ship a little bit as we get to the end of the year. Some things, because we've done it for a while, there's certain things that are more on cruise control, so we can make certain decisions. We used to have a rule that anything over, we'd make a budget at the beginning of the year, and then anything over $500 we had to consult with each other, but if it was under $500 we, expense, and we'd already talked about it as part of our plan, you just do it. We brought our expenses down a lot in the last few years, and we just kind of know what we need to do, so we need to talk a little bit less. There's less big budget items. I mean, by now we kind of have our program, we have most of the equipment we need, but things come up, like our hoop house, which you might remember, it's got a big rip in the plastic, and it's going to cost over $500 to replace that plastic, and we've got to sort of discuss, what's up with that and how we're going to do that. So that's who manages the finances in a very general way. What are the best practices around managing the money? Good question, Paul. So I'm just going to give you a few things here. I don't want, you could go on and on about that one. I don't know, talking to any farmer is a good person to ask about best practices for managing money, but we do what we can. I'd say develop simple, consistent systems of doing things. Like I've learned it, like if it's Tuesday, then you do your bills, or you do your banking. You go to the bank, and if it's Friday, you go get your change from the bank. And there's certain things I do, like billing, invoicing. Well, invoicing you have to invoice when you bring stuff, but there's certain things that I just do on a schedule, and I found that that's been really helpful to getting things done and not feeling hectic, because a lot of times there's things hanging over your head, and when you run a farm, it gets really busy this time of year, especially when you're in your first few years, and you're like, what am I doing? It's good to have just continuity. As far as managing the money, creating spreadsheets, seeing what works, and analyzing your crops, it's great. It's hard sometimes, and as a farmer, it can be very hard to analyze certain things. For instance, like if we're trying to figure out how much money are we making on farm markets versus selling to stores, or versus going to a distributor, it's really hard because a lot of these expenses, they're just, you pay one insurance bill. How do you divide what's each? You're growing 5 rows, 5 200-foot rows or something. It's a little hard to go, well, exactly this goes to this, exactly goes to that. But if you spend time and you think things through and you're careful, and if you can learn Excel or some spreadsheet program, it really helps. It just, especially in the winter when things slow down, which they do around here a lot, you can spend some time and really start to see, like, oh, I'm spending all this money on this, or oh, these crops don't make me money. There was a time about 4 years ago, Paul taught me to be strategic. Has he mentioned that before? That the next level, that was, if I took one thing away, be strategic, and that helped a lot. I've used that as a mantra ever since. But 2008, there were we were growing a lot more crops then, and we're like, okay, we're growing all this kale and collards, and we're doing lettuce, and we're doing radishes, and it felt like we had a big crew by then. We had like 6, 8 full-time people this time of year, and we were going crazy. We were just going nuts, and there was more cash coming in than before, but the bottom line was kind of similar. And so I really spent some time looking at this, and I discovered that there was this group of crops that I called them the headache crops. And as I looked at them closer, I realized that by doing analysis, I realized that we'd probably brought in about $40,000, $50,000 in these crops, and I discovered that we've spent $40,000 to $50,000 to grow them.
And would you like to share which crops those